Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
John, and by the way, congratulations, John. 7 years.
7 years of unemployment. Yay! No. Thank you.
7 years what now? This is since you launched Blast the Radio? Is that what we're saying?
Since the official launch of Blast the Radio. Yep, it was, I was let go from my job at the radio station and thought, okay, I'll hang out on the internet for a while. 7 years later, here we are.
What gave you the idea?
Remember you were there when Chum still owned CFRA and Cool FM, which is where you and I first worked together. They had an internet radio division for some time called 3WB, which then became Bonzaroo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, really?
No.
Well, so that was in the early 90s, back in the days of dial-up internet. So I always had internet radio in the back of my mind. And lo and behold, fortuitously, I found myself out of work, found an app that would allow me to stream online. And I thought, let's do that for a while. 7 years later, I can't imagine being anywhere else and doing anything other than this.
Well, you've really expanded. I mean, now you're doing radio stations in Florida and southwestern Ontario. You're becoming internationally famous.
There you go. Everything for a reason, right?
The next thing is to become internationally rich.
Well, give me some time. I'm working on it.
You know what? You might as well laugh as cry. The latest announcements from the Ontario government. School opening now delayed for 2 weeks till January 17. There'll be online learning or whatever it is until then. Indoor dining shut down until January 21st. Gyms, my wife is just pulling her hair out. She just loves going to the gym. She says everybody that goes to the gym agrees that it is an essential service and should not be shut down. So we often forget about that. But folks, what's your reaction to this? Is this overreaction, do you think? The health authority, we seem to be getting mixed messages. 2 or 3 days ago, Dr. Kieran Moore, he is Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, admitted that as many as 50% of all people in hospital listed as having COVID, in fact, probably was not admitted there for COVID at all, but was admitted for something else, tested and found to have COVID. In many cases, no symptoms or very mild symptoms. In other words, what he is saying is that about 50% of people listed in hospital with COVID probably would not be there if it was just COVID. They're there for, a broken hip or broken leg or something else. They're tested and found to be positive. But in many cases, no symptoms are very, very mild symptoms. So, 3-4 days ago, he says that. And then, this morning, he's there standing by Doug Ford, announcing, I guess, and agreeing with all of these new restrictions and lockdowns. I don't know. I admit it's very difficult for me or anybody with a brain, and I hope I still have at least a smidgen of a brain left, to argue with health authorities. I mean, this is their profession, John. I mean, they have studied in many cases many, many years. They're the experts here. So it's hard for laymen like you and I to question. But one thing I do know, and that is that if there is justification, and I assume that there is for these additional restrictions, they have not provided us, at least they haven't provided me, with the data that proves it. As an example, here in Ottawa, we have, at the latest report, 21 people reporting with COVID in our hospitals. Well, we have about 1,700 hospital beds in this city. 21 of them occupied by people who may or may not be there because of COVID, and 4 in ICU. Well, we have 40 ICU beds in this city, 4 of which are occupied by people claiming to have COVID. Even if it's accurate, it doesn't sound like overwhelming our hospitals to me. Now, there's no question that overall in the province, the number of people in hospital has been bumped up and continues to climb. This only makes sense. The more people who are tested, and I mean, let's face it. I mean, we are now finding, I mean, almost every day, tens of thousands of people who have contacted this new Omicron. It is my suspicion, and there's certainly growing evidence, that sooner or later, almost all of us are going to catch this. And in almost all cases, we won't even know we have it, or if we do, it'll be very, very mild or have no symptoms whatsoever. We have a family member, young, strong man, woke up about noon on a Wednesday, feeling rough. Symptoms of Omicron, was tested, and he was positive. 3 hours later, he's feeling fine. The next day, well, that's what he told me. The next day, he's down in the basement lifting weights. But this to me seems fairly simple. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody that gets Omicron has no symptoms, or very few, but it would seem to me that the great overwhelming majority, and the evidence is here. I mean, how many thousands of new cases have we had in the past 3 or 4 days? Something like 15 or 20,000 new cases of infections in Ottawa and the area in the past few days, and we have only 21 in hospital. It just does not sound overwhelming to me. Maybe it's going to get worse, and the numbers they are climbing. We've got to admit it. But what about you? What's your feeling here? I mean, here we go again. These, if I'm a restaurant owner, I am either pulling my hair out or I'm ready to storm Queen's Park. I think if I was a restaurant owner, I'd be storming Queen's Park and saying, "Okay, you're shutting me down again. You're going to put me out of business. There's no question about it. Can't put up with this much longer." I'm speaking on behalf of a good many of them. I don't care what benefits you're going to. I mean, we need to be in business. What's okay? You say it has to happen. What is the justification? Where is the data? If I'm a restaurant owner, that's what I'm asking. Where is the data? Most people we know, and most restaurant owners, in fact, most of us now know somebody, member of the family or neighbor or something, who's got Omicron, and no symptoms, or very few symptoms. And I'm sure that many of the restaurant owners, maybe some of them themselves, have got this, and within a day or two, they're just fine. So they're asking, I mean, why are you shutting me down for this? I don't know. But as I say, who the hell am I to question hospital authorities? These people have made a lifetime out of studying this. Who am I to question this? I guess the one thing that I think it's a legitimate question is, where is the data? You say that you fear that it's going to overwhelm the hospitals. We've now had this for well over a month. There are tens of thousands of new cases in this country every day. Yes, the number in hospital is climbing, but we're nowhere near, certainly not here in Ottawa, nowhere near overwhelming. And I don't see that this happening in the rest of Ontario either. Now, I guess we should be lucky in one way, and that is that however draconian the actions taken this morning by Doug Ford and the government, it's not nearly as serious as what they have done in the province of Quebec. I mean, they've got a curfew. Essentially Quebec's been shut down. But once again, folks, that's me. What about you? What's your feeling here? Have we gone too far? Is it justified? I'm going to tell you right now, and I mentioned this last Wednesday when I was on last, and that is that it's not just health authorities that, for example, don't want the schools to open. There's a lot of parents who are very leery about this. I was watching TV news over the weekend, and all kinds of people, including other politicians, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't they do more? Why don't we have a curfew, et cetera, et cetera? So it's not just the health authorities. There are a lot of people who agree we got to do something. But I just wonder if we're not being panicked here. Yes, the numbers of this infection are skyrocketing. But there were times when almost everybody in the damn province got a cold. And in many cases, many instances, cold lasted longer than Omicron. I remember we had a phone call from a woman last week. I'll never forget. She was complaining she had bronchitis, and because she was complaining that I said it was very mild cold. She said nothing mild about it, And I said, was it serious enough to go to a hospital? Oh no. And I said, how long did it last? She said, well, 3 days. I said, wait a minute. Most colds will last at least a week or longer. What's your feeling here? Jace is on the phone. Jace, what's your feeling here? Overreaction? Is it justified?
Total overreaction. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do. I've got $7,000 worth of produce growing in my shop, and now I can't get rid of it because all the restaurants are closed. Like, we've had 6 shutdowns like this. This is my 6th one. $7,000 each and every time. I haven't had a dime from the government. I haven't had a dime of support from my landlord. Like, what am I supposed to do? My wife's at home. She's crying. She's at the basket case.
Why, Jace? Why aren't you eligible for government support?
We've been in business for a short period of time. Our incorporation was relatively short. So, and there's been no restrictions on us because we are essentially an indoor farm. No one's making us stop.
But you just don't have the class.
You're right. And so all of a sudden our clients disappear. The restaurants go and all of a sudden we're done. Again. One more time.
So you're not eligible for government, provincial or federal. Am I correct on that?
None. Zero.
Can you stay in business? Is this the end then?
We've dug $100,000 hole in the last 18 months, 20 months. Like, the only way out is to continue. Like, I can't afford to lose this. If I lose this, I lose my home. What am I, this is beyond ridiculous. Like you said, and this is what drove me crazy. I posted on Facebook last night. It's like, they just told us that they were padding the numbers. They just told us that a whole bunch of these hospitalizations had nothing to do with COVID. They just happened to have it as well.
That's true. And
they're making this shit up.
This statement was made by Karen Moore, Dr. Karen Moore, who is Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health. So this is not some wild, right winger making this statement. This is our Chief Medical Officer of Health agreeing. And you use the word padding. He didn't use that word, but they're what's called incidental. In other words, they would not be in hospital for COVID. It just happens they were in hospital for something else, and while they're tested positive, but in many cases, their symptoms are so mild they would not be there just for COVID. But they're still listed as hospital stats. It really raises the question. I mean, they tell us, Jace, that there's 21 people with COVID in Ottawa hospitals. Are half of those padded? I mean, are we only looking really at 10 or 11? I don't know. This is one of the problems. It's so hard to get definitive facts, to get the data from these people.
Well, I've been, like, you and I have been discussing this, and everybody else has been discussing it. It's like, this is the topic of conversation in every single conversation in the city. Everybody's talking about it. And I've got friends who are like naysayers, and they're just like, this entire thing is absolute bullshit. And I've been like, no, we just need to get to 80%. They told us. And I mean, you were on the radio saying the same thing. If we can't believe the health professionals, who can we believe? And now we can't believe the health professionals because they're not telling us the actual story. And Jace, it's like, what's left?
Jace, I don't know what to say to you. I'm sure that your story is repeated many, many times, thousands of times across this across this province, across this country. This you said something that a lot of people don't know. I think there are a lot of people who think, oh, the guy's in business, he's a rich bugger. He doesn't have to worry. Many people, and I've done this myself, and I've lost my home. I lost everything once, and that's the problem. If you're going to go into business, unless you're a Justin Trudeau or somebody of the Laurentian elite, in all probability, you are putting your house and your home and everything you own up as collateral at the bank. And I'm going to tell you, no bank that I know would have any sympathy whatsoever.
None whatsoever. I guess people don't realize I haven't had a paycheck since December 2019.
So what do you say to Doug Ford? What do you say to Doug Ford and the health authorities?
Whoa, I'll get deleted for saying this. This is excuse my language, this is effing stupid. This is insane. Totally insane. The knee-jerk reaction in Quebec across the bridge, it's like you get a $6,000 fine if you're not in your house by 10 o'clock. What, does Omicron know the difference? We're going to fool them by switching up time?
Jace,
how do we do this? If this is just I had one of my employees, he's a nice 16-year-old kid. And he says to me 4 months ago, he says, well, Jace, he says, didn't you have a backup plan? It's like, what was I going to back up? This is my livelihood. I've literally put every single dime that I've earned in the last 8 years into this.
Jace, I don't know what to say to you other than you're not alone. I hope you can make it. Hang in there as best you can, my boy. Thank you. Well,
cheers.
This sometimes I really wonder if the health authorities, if the people making decisions in this province really, really understand what they're doing. One would hope that they do, but have any of these people ever? I mean, Doug Ford's a businessman. He must know the situation. I'm understanding that he's doing this with great reluctance, that the pressure is fierce, including from his own cabinet. But do any of these people really, really understand what they're doing? Don't talk in sort of abstract terms about the economy and etc. Let's talk in terms about what this is doing to human beings, the Jaces of the world. Ay. All right, I got to take a bit of a break here, folks. I wish I could take a break. Do you want to take over for a minute or two, John? What's your feeling, John? Give me a break here.
How about I read some comments? My feelings, I think we're flying by the seat of our pants here. Every single decision that seems to come from the governments just seems to be sort of willy-nilly. I mean, the government met on the weekend and we're supposed to have made a decision. We hear nothing. Then they say that they're going to have an announcement at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. 10 o'clock comes around. No, we've bumped that to 11. We're all sitting here waiting for 11 o'clock, 11:29. The man doesn't even have the decency to show up on time for a press conference and just say what it is. What is he hiding from? Why is he not at the press conference on time? Why can he not look Jace in the eye and say, I have to do what I have to do, and I'm on time, and at least showing you the respect to do that? It just seems to be completely made up and flying by the seat of our pants with no plan and no real understanding for where we're going, what we're doing, or what the end game is here. And I feel for Jace, and people are asking, what is his business? Jace is a sponsor of ours here on blasttheradio.com. He works hard. He is supplying restaurants with microgreens. They are essentially vegetables. They are absolutely delicious. They are wonderful. And if you'd like to support a small business like that, he is open to the public. Microgreensottawa.ca. Sorry, Lowell, I know it's your show. It's my sponsor, but there's a small business that could use your hand, and I think he's got a great thing going. He works his ass off. He's in there morning, noon, and night, and I feel for him. There's absolutely no help. I know that I run my own business here, and I said this from the very get-go of COVID. There was no help for me. In order for me to collect any sort of government subsidy, and I'm glad I didn't, which I recognize I would have to pay back anyway. I would have had to have declared to the government that I had to close my business. The fact that I elected to remain open forbid me from getting any government assistance. That's not right.
I don't know. I have, everybody knows that's listened to this program knows that until recently, I've been a staunch supporter. Nobody's pushed harder to get to get vaccinated, et cetera, and urged people to listen to the health authorities. But I think that one thing that seems to be lost in much of this is that Omicron is not Delta. This is a totally, totally different disease. What was appropriate for Delta and the earlier waves was appropriate, and they may have gone overboard somewhat, but nonetheless was necessary and to a large degree worked. But this is not the same. The evidence is everywhere that Omicron, in almost every case, is very mild and in many cases is totally asymptomatic, has no symptoms whatsoever. Tens of thousands of people are getting it. Tens of thousands more people will get it. This will go on for months. Surely to God, we can't keep shutting down for months. This, I repeat, this is a totally different situation, and in my opinion, should be treated totally different. The problem we had before with Delta and prior to that was it was overloading our hospitals. There was a real danger. We saw this in some other jurisdictions, particularly in the South. In Los Angeles, they had to back up freezer trucks to take the bodies. We did not get into that in this country, thank God, because of many of the steps that we took. But this is different. They are not lining up, mortuary trucks to store bodies anymore. I repeat, with tens of thousands of people in this province, being newly infected. In the city of Ottawa, we have 21 claiming to have COVID in our hospitals, 4 in ICU. Doesn't sound like overwhelming to me. Maybe it will, and maybe it's all justified. I'd like to hear from some of you. In the meantime, got to get a word in here for another small business that's done very, very well. Thank you very much. I'm talking about Shields. By the way, the boxing, just like the big box stores, Shields has a Boxing Week sale, which continues actually until Wednesday. You can save up to $800. If you check the website, you'll see there's some tremendous savings there. They've got a lot of stock that they've got to get rid of. We have been talking about the fact, new regulations coming in that say that only the Energy Star appliances can be sold. So Shields has got a good supply of of both Energy Star and non-Energy Star for sale, and you can save a ton of money, certainly up until Wednesday. So, folks, and don't forget, we drove by the other day. I was going to go in, but the place was so crowded. There's a really beautiful little butcher shop there as well. I didn't get my duck there, but we've certainly got some sausage, and it's great. Everybody in the valley knows Shields, primarily for appliances, but a nice little butcher shop as well. John, we've got some more response here, please.
We've got so many comments, Lowell. I've been getting as many up on the screen as I can. For those listening on the audio stream, of course, that means nothing. But if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, etc., you are seeing as many of the comments as I can discover and click on and get up there. Here we go. Quickly, I'll run through some of them. Kathy says, this is beyond overreacting. Jody says, lockdowns were supposed to be regional. Joshua in to say, we know it will be more than 2 weeks. It's never been 2 weeks, and yet we know the healthier you are, the better you can likely fight COVID. Yet government, let's close gyms to keep you safe. Makes sense. Nina says, if Trudeau and Ford and Legault all go on vacation during this lockdown, could we all band together and demand resignations? Peter says, mixed messages. Some people at the health table need to go. People are not pleased. You can't even get rapid tests. Hard to support this government. The health experts in the U.S. are doing opposite things unless it's Dr. Fauci. He's another pro-lockdown doctor. Kathy says, all this is proving that our governments have failed our healthcare system. Chrissy on Twitch says, I think the government had no idea what to expect. The Ontario numbers jumped so rapidly. They sure as heck did not know what to do, or I suspect, or respond. Laurentian View Terry says, it's the old problem. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The question is, do you be overcautious or undercautious? Ray says, but you can still have 300 people packed into a plane. No word on upping the delivery of vaccines and boosters is Anne's complaint. Veronica says, the mental health of my children is my number one concern. Their reaction to this news was heartbreaking. My own mental health with this news is questionable as well. Claude says, where are all the vaccines for boosters that Trudeau promised? Unable to book any appointment anywhere. Lori says, Doug is worried about hospitals getting full, protesters on the street in Quebec with no masks. This is always going to be with us. Angela says they are not following the science. Thousands have it, but it's not overwhelming the hospitals. Are the people in hospital or ICU admitted with other issues? And when they test them, they find them positive? Sherry says, I drive for Uber Eats, and some restaurant owners have had to take out second mortgages. I feel bad for them. Ray says, one person in ICU in Cornwall. Lisa on Facebook says, teachers were pushing for schools to remain closed until N95 masks were distributed to all schools. Terry says, can you sit on the restaurant's balcony during 40 below and order maybe cold soup? Cold soup for you, soup Nazi, he says. There you go. Some of the comments coming in, Lowell.
I have something else that we're running short of time here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you noticed or not. I find this, I got a chuckle. I suppose it's not really funny. But as you know, the state of California is by far the most left-wing state of a country with many left-wing states. And long ago, they decided that they were going to rely on wind power and solar power for a lot of their power in California. Well, guess what, folks? Not most, but a good many of the windmills have broken down. And when the weather gets really bad, very often the wind doesn't blow, so there's no power. So get that. And this is also the state, California, that has urged people to buy electric vehicles. Well, guess what? The state government is just warning people, please do not charge your electric vehicles. We're running out of power.
Oh, no.
And then, you know what? This is something else that is becoming more and more evident. And that is when really bad weather comes, be it real hot or real cold, the wind very often doesn't blow. This is what's happened now in Alberta. That, as you know, I mean, the temperature dropped to record levels, minus 35, minus 40, et cetera, et cetera. And when this gets really cold like that, if you ever notice, the smoke goes straight up. John, you've noticed that. It goes straight. There's no wind. So guess what? For one solid week in Alberta, during record-breaking cold, there was no wind. Do you know what the average production of electricity was from all of the windmills and solar panels in Alberta? 2.5%.
I saw
You
that.
know what they had to do? They had to go back and refire some of the old coal-fired energy plants in order to supply heat to people, because they had relied on, and the same thing is happening in Europe. They're relying on wind and solar. Let me tell you right now, okay? So 2.5%. That was the average for one solid week in Alberta during one of the coldest spells in history. And as I say, they had to fire up some of the old coal-fired energy plants. Here at noon here in Ontario, we were burning. I know you get sick of this, but you know what? Like, I invite you to ieso.ca. It's so easy to see. You can see it by the hour. So at noon today, we were burning 17,753 megawatts of power. A lot of people heating their homes, right? With natural gas in many cases, right? Not too many people heating with electricity. So what do you think now? It's a beautiful, bright, sunny day. You would think that if there's going to be solar power, today would be the day. Well, let me tell you, folks, as of noon today, 17,753 megawatts of power we were burning. Solar providing, ready for it? 42 on a bright sunny day. Why? Most of the solar panels are covered with snow. Oh, it snows in Ontario. Of course. Forgot. Oh, yeah, snow. Wind? Well, there's virtually no wind. If you look today, really cold, smoke is going straight up. No wind. Wind providing 408. Folks, combined 408 megawatts with wind, 42 with solar. That is, guess what? 2.5% of our needs. We have spent tens of billions of dollars. We have bankrupted people. We have driven more than 100,000 jobs out of the province because of high electrical rates to build windmills and solar panels. And during a cold snap, 2.5% in Alberta, 2.5% here in Ontario. Beautiful, eh? Remind us again about green energy, please. Thank you all, folks. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.